Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Saladino.
Dreams what I'm chasing, flow hot as chafing. This is why I'm hot, no, that is why I'm blazing.
So, to the surprise of no one, they got to Del Walker and they're making him walk back his tweets about how he's designed beautiful black women in the past, and once they've been submitted, they've come back uglified. That's essentially what he said. Now, maybe back off is not the correct term. It's almost like a complete nuclear situation that's going on here. And it's done in this really weird, passive-aggressive way. Okay, so Grums put out this tweet. The AAA artist who revealed the truth about black female characters in games being uglified is backing off. They got to him. Looks like he had a talking to. They don't want you to know what's going on. They just don't want you to talk about it. Everybody knows what's going on. Del Walker knows, the Sweet Baby Inks, black girl gamers, they all know that we know what's going on. And they do this thing to try to gaslight us into acting like, well, number one, they do the thing about you're addicted to porn if you want to see a beautiful black woman. Then they do this thing where these women are more realistic, and they do this thing about hypersexualization. And Del Walker tried to do this thing with his first tweets where he's like, I hate to give Gamergate men fuel. But then he goes on this thing about how, well, I'm being misinterpreted. No, you're not. You knew that what you said was going to give, quote unquote, Gamergate men fuel. But now you're trying to act like, well, what I was saying was more nuanced. No, it wasn't. But anyway, here's the actual tweet that Grums was essentially retweeting. After some private DMs today with other black devs, I will no longer be publicly discussing black representation in games for the foreseeable. No more panels, articles, podcasts, nothing. This is not up for discussion, nor is it an invitation to try and change my mind. Cheers. The fact that this clown thinks that anybody would change his mind, this is the thing. The people on his side of this discussion don't want him to talk about this stuff. That's why he's not talking about it. The people on our side don't need him to change his mind. It's like, hey, stupid, if you want to dig your hole and bury yourself in that hole, that's up to you. You would get more support from gamers if you're planning on one day opening up a gaming studio. You're not going to get support from actual gamers. You're going to be like your boy Abu Bakr Salim and have your game buried because everybody knows he's associated with Sweet Baby Inc. Whether the game itself is good or not, nobody gives two shits about. He's actively a part of the people who are against gamers. This whole culture war thing, they keep acting like that they're above and they're not a part of. They created it. They came into the space and decided that you can't have beautiful because it harms women in real life somehow. The hypersexualization. And Del Walker is firmly a part of that camp. The fact that he would go out of his way to not just say, hey, look, well, this is the thing. He shouldn't say anything. Why is he even making a statement about this? Maybe this is some weird cry for help because he went out of his way to tell everybody that black devs went to him. And now because of that, he's not even going to discuss black representation in games. Isn't that supposed to be so important to you? Isn't that the reason why Sweet Baby Inc. exists? Isn't that the reason why black girl gamers exist? Isn't that the reason why we're getting so many black women as protagonists in games that people are telling you we don't even want to play as? Isn't that why we have so many race swaps? Because this is such an important issue. But because you made a point to say, hey, look, there's room for both good-looking black women and these grocery store aunties, now you decide you can't talk about it or you won't talk about it. And so after Grums did this retweet and made this statement, Del Walker's little Weasley tail, he has the nerve to call himself the cartel Del. I hate when these guys act like they're such badasses in their Twitter handles and YouTube handles or whatever, and they're puddles of nothing. So he goes, hi, Grums. For clarity, the reason I'm not discussing it anymore is because of Gamergate people misinterpreting what I'm saying and using it to fuel a culture war. Black devs have asked me to continue to speak my mind, but I'm no longer seeing the upside to do it publicly. No, they didn't. Why would, if black devs are telling you, speak your mind, and you go, I'm not going to speak my mind, what in the hell do you think people are going to get from that? How stupid is this guy? That's the thing. Del Walker, he's one of these people who acts like he's smarter than he is. And the thing is, all you have to do is look at how he acted with the whole Power World thing. I knew not to respect him or to expect anything from him, period. So this thing about change my mind. Nobody saw you as a hero. If he says something that's interesting, we go, look, this guy is confirming what we already knew. We're surprised he said it. We know what's going to happen. We know he's going to get night letters telling him to shut up. The fact that he's saying that is, I can't get over how stupid this guy is to actually think that people would believe this bullshit that black devs are telling him to keep speaking his mind, but I'm not going to. And the reason is, he's saying that the reason is because Gamergate men are misinterpreting him and it's fueling a culture war. If this is an important issue to you, just keep speaking on it. Explain what's the misinterpretation. But there is no misinterpretation. He said exactly what he said. He was actually right. And people are not stupid. We've been talking about this forever. The only reason why we even talking about Del Walker is because he said what he said, and it confirms what we already knew. And everybody said when he said it, you know they're going to come after you for saying this. This thing about he thought he could protect himself by saying I hate to give Gamergate men fuel. If he didn't think what he said sounded exactly what gamers have been saying for years now about how they're deliberately making women ugly in Western games, why would he worry about giving Gamergate men fuel? This thing now about how he tells Grums, well, I'm not speaking publicly about this because I'm being misinterpreted by Gamergate men. But if you're being misinterpreted by them, you just make clarifying statements. You just explain where you're coming from. This is an important issue. Why would you go scorched earth and say, I'm not going to talk about this subject at all? If they're telling you what you're doing is right and we want you to continue to do it, you wouldn't make this public statement about it. And you wouldn't make a point of saying, after speaking to black people in my DMs, that's why I think maybe he's trying to be slick and doing a cry for help where he's like winking at you by saying, hey, look, I would talk about this, but I had black devs in my DMs.
Black girl magic!
People keep saying in the replies to him, and he's ignoring most of them, what is the misinterpretation? Nothing you said. Him showing that beautiful wag, what's her name, Salami Benson, versus the Urkel looking woman is no different than me or somebody else on a YouTube video or on Twitter going, look at this actress they picked to be the model for their protagonist in Fable. She's a good looking woman. I would say beautiful woman. And yet look at the actual finished product in Fable itself. She looks like one of the trans women staff members behind the game. Whether she was actually based on that guy or not, she looks like him. She's clearly trans friendly. And I keep saying this thing about how this whole agenda that feminists have, they've invaded gaming spaces, Anita Sarkeesian, all of them to come complaining about the way women walk in their, the hip sway and the shape of their asses and all this stuff. They complain about this stuff and then they act like there's no difference between men and women. So in their way of defeating the male gaze is they tell themselves by making women look like men. And to play this game, so to speak, that there's some kind of nuance that's not being understood with what Dell is saying is ridiculous. It's absurd. It's nonsense. Grums himself says, which part was the misinterpretation? You spoke about female character designs being nerfed in their beauty until they were grocery store aunties. Also, you publicly decided to be silent after people talked to you. How is that not having been talked to? They got to you. They did. Somebody else says, if you can no longer speak your mind publicly, then can you really speak your mind? And this is when he goes, I can speak my mind on this subject, but Grums literally made up a lie that I had a talking to and that they got to me. If people are going to weaponize my blackness and then call me a DEI.
Say the N-word, I must.
You can't say that word, Yoda.
Yes, I can.
Non-stop whenever Grums posts about me, then it's not that I can't speak my mind, it's that I don't want to. There is zero upside. Nobody's been doing that. He's lying. And talking about lies, the projection is real. The fact nobody is calling him a DEI, he's saying that because he can't admit why, even though he publicly said, after being talked to by fellow black devs in my DMs, I am now going scorched earth and will no longer talk about black representation in video games, which is just the most important thing in his life. He talked about how after I don't forget how many years he's been in the industry, he finally got to see a black man on the cover of a AAA game. Talking about race swap Deadshot, like anybody gives a shit about that. Now all of a sudden, because Gamergate men don't understand the nuance of what I was saying, and because I'm being called a DNI, the fact that they call a sexy woman, if an artist draws a sexy, curvy bombshell woman, and they draw a woman that looks like 2B or Eve, and it's called misogyny, tells you there's something wrong with these people, that they have a political brain rot, that they're trying to force into a hobby that nobody asked them to be a part of. And it's now a culture war because they're mad that the people in the hobby are trying to get them out of it. And people like Del Walker, he can say what he wants. He knows that it's a problem too. And instead of continuing to speak out against that issue, he's going to shut up because people in his DMs told him to speak about it publicly, but he's worried about quote unquote Gamergate men taking him out of context. Soft.
Who the fuck said to speak, Mr. Me, Siamese? Even Christ said Christ, he flows quite nicely. Hype beats highly likely to bite me and try to high-five me, but I just give them high threes, cause y'all don't get to touch me, I'm the shit. Sue me if you got an issue, grab a tissue. Mediocrity is odd to me.